The content presented in this podcast and YouTube show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this show. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guest, and producers of this show are not responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your use of or reliance on any information presented. Andrea, can you hear us?
Many years ago, I died for 26 seconds. There are so many people in this world that have experienced life events that have led to their soul purpose. Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea will bring you these significant life events that demonstrate how to use those moments for guidance and life purpose. These are our stories. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea Lynn. Today's guest is Vica Rader, and she's here to talk to us about your human worth and quantum leaping. Let's welcome Vica. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Andrea. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. I'm excited because this is actually not an episode I've done. I mean, I know you said you could talk about manifesting, so we'll talk about that a little bit. I've had some guests touch on that, but I actually haven't had anybody talk about quantum leaping or any of that. Give a little bit of a backstory to how you got here and how you discovered all this.
I was born in a former Soviet Union in Ukraine and at a place where neither God nor spirituality were welcome or present. And I was born with very clear intuitive gifts or psychic gifts using whatever language it is. But truly, I believe the capacity to tune in to spirit, to divine guidance. And from very early age, I seemed to know and understand human nature intuitively and come up with these solutions that worked for people. And so I'd have like my mom invite her friends for tea or coffee. And then I was like this 13, 14-year-old, scoping the situation. And then I did like leaf reading and what have you, only to understand that all of the different ways to kind of not foretell the future in any way, but to know where you were heading unless you changed your trajectory is pretty much what I'm doing all day long. Having polished this skill with much training and a PhD and all of those accolades behind the name, I'm still that 14-year-old saying, this is where you are. And if you don't fix this, this is where you're going. And if you want to be going in a different place, this is what you do. That's in a nutshell is a story from the talent to how I ended up where I ended up.
Yeah, that's really interesting talking about if you keep doing what you're doing, this is what's going to happen. I mean, I think a lot of people need to hear that because sometimes they know they're kind of stuck on a hamster wheel, but yet it hasn't really hit them. And when you can hit them hard with, hey, like you keep doing this, this is how it's going to look later. And then they have more of a realization of, okay, I really do need to make that change. And then if you can give them the tools to make the change and explain to them, here's what the change looks like and here's what the future looks like. If you make those changes, I think that's a great insight for people to gain. But I have to ask, I don't know, what is leaf reading?
It's a Chinese tradition where you drink tea and then you flip the cup and the leaves actually stick to the side of the cup. And the pattern of the leaf is indicative of quote unquote what you're to expect. And it could be aligned with anything, coffee reading, palm reading. But this is what I've come to understand in a very simple way. We're all energy. That is not woo. That is a state of fact. We are energy. In the very core of each one of us, we're an atom that consists of protons and neutrons and a bunch of electrons fluttering around. That is who we are on a basic, fundamental quantum level. And so when you understand the laws of energy, one of those laws is called entanglement. When you understand that who you are at the basic quantum energy level is how you will show up in everything.
Mhm.
Now you understand why people erroneously started assigning the reflection of who you are to tarot cards or candle burning or all of that stuff. And the problem with all of that stuff is that when you assign, you are seeing where the person is. And then based on your own fear, you will assign where they're going. So I'm really not big on fortune telling because when somebody fortune tells, they tell you their version of where they believe you're going.
Interesting. I mean, I do card readings, but I know when my mind is in play and when it's not in play. And so I intuitively channel things. So I guess I would disagree a little bit on that to say that I don't feel like I put my own visions into it necessarily. And I just kind of let the visions come to me that I see. Um, divinely. I mean, I always pray on it and ask that the messages that person needs to hear come through me, and I just
Explain
be a
better.
channel.
Let me explain better. Let me explain better so that this misunderstanding does not linger because that is what it is. And that's an example of what I'm saying,
Okay.
actually. So imagine God, the divine source, pours the brightest of light as the source. And there are two containers, you and me.
Mm-hmm.
And these containers have very clear dynamics of your DNA versus my DNA,
Mm-hmm.
of your history versus my history.
Mm-hmm.
And so this purest of knowing has to come through everything. And it cannot come up as the purest knowing anymore. It comes up as our version of understanding of that knowing.
Interesting. Okay. I see what you're saying.
So, for example, you and I, and this is what I love, I, of course, teach intuitive class, and then I'll say, okay, we're all so wonderful. Can we intuit what this person will have for lunch in half hour before I send them on lunch break? Can we intuit? Let's write down, and then you can see how much of it was something you've received and how much of it was what you've perceived, and they're not one and the same. And so perception is the first mental faculty that colors our ability to talk with God, which is why when I show this to you and I say, there is no baby Yoda there, you're like, there is a baby Yoda. I'm like, no, there isn't. There's just a bunch of letters. I'm looking at this. You're looking at this. We're both right. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Okay. For people that are listening and not watching, she was showing her phone case on the one side has the baby Yoda, and then she flips it over. So she was looking at the side with just the writing, just to explain it for people that are listening only. Okay, I understand. I will say when I'm trying to channel or help somebody and give them a message, the messages I trust are the ones that I don't understand. And the ones where I'm like, I don't know what this means and I don't get it, but this is what I'm going to tell you because I really think that's not me. And where it's a message, I hadn't been thinking about that. I don't know where it came from. That's where I really know. And that's why I tell people like those are the things that you can trust as intuitive guidance because it wasn't like you were already thinking about that. Like, oh, it's already been on my mind. It's like, whoa, okay, where that came from left field. This must mean something and be coming from somewhere else. But it's really interesting, though, how you were explaining, because I struggle sometimes to explain to people energy. They can't understand energy healing and energy work. This is a weird example I often give, but just think about this, how women can move into a house together and then all of a sudden we all cycle together with our periods, right? And do you think it's because we all had a conversation? We're like, let's do it next week. And even if we did have a conversation, that wouldn't make it happen. There's that energy that comes from the body and everything starts to shift. And I don't even want to say get into alignment, but it shifts and you all get on that same field. And it's kind of like you're saying how we have the energy of the area that we're in, basically, right? Like we kind of take it on depending on where we're at. And so it is really important to place yourself in these places where the energy is higher vibrations, or at least what you're seeking.
I think I love English. It's not my first language, but it's my favorite because it describes reality so properly. When you come into the office, you ask who's in charge because that person will charge the space. When we're tired, we say, I'm drained, like a battery. So we actually use the language to describe properly the experience of energy. And if we go back to that basic of atom to electron, If you were to shrink the Earth and the planets to the size of the atom, you would see that the space between the atom and the electrons is greater than the space between the sun and its planets. Ratio-wise, it's greater. So while we appear solid, we're actually empty space. And it's purposeful because empty space allows for pure flow, because energy moves, life flows. And when things are not flowing, it's because in this empty space, we have stored trauma, we have stored, as you've mentioned, low frequencies, we've stored unprocessed emotions, and those block the flow. So any and all energy healing then unblocks the flow. And as you are receiving intuitive messages to help your clients, those are, I always say, it's like if you're unplugging the tub. When they receive the message, they unplug the tub, right? And so the flow can move a little bit easier. So at least that's probably the simplest explanation of why there's no wrong way to heal. There's just infinite right ways to be aligning with the flow.
How do you explain healing energy? I think it's all very similar, but I think people, they don't get it and they don't understand. And I get it. I was blown away by it too. Sometimes people, they're like, well, I don't get it. I don't understand. I'm like, well, just sit there for a second. Let me bring it in for you. And then they're like, oh my gosh, why are your hands so hot? And why are like, I feel hot where you're touching me. And they can feel that energy coming off. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So there is the basics of quantum mechanics is that everything is energy. Energy is constantly moving and it's never created nor destroyed. It's constantly transmuted and transformed. And so all healing is transforming the energy that is pure, that is intentional, that is healing to the energy that is stagnant. And so when you are describing the quantum touch or Reiki or hands-on, any modality that requires for your hands, and I don't know whether you have video version, but if I hold my hand, it'll start turning red. And it's fascinating because I'm just bringing the flow of energy to the surface of the physical body. But when you move the energy, speed brings heat. Well, I'm going to say it's not a political statement at all about global warming. Well, global warming is currently inevitable because universe is expanding. Expansions mean speed. Speed means friction. Frictions means heat. It's just we have to love our planet, not because we are to avoid the global warming, but because we're to love our planet. That's just my little spiel. But it's good to love our planet, period. Yeah. Don't need to have an excuse to not harm it.
Yeah.
Right? And so with energy flow, every human being has innate capacity to heal. As a matter of fact, in our brain, there is a center of wholeness that is dormant. We have a center of restoration that is active, and that is the center that repairs our body, usually when we sleep or when we're in theta brainwave. But there is a wholeness center that is activated only in two species on this planet, the species that never die. There is an amoeba and there is a jellyfish that continually regenerates because they have that particular spot activated. I think it would be unsafe for humanity where it is at the greed cycle right now for us to continually regenerate. So, gratefully, God has us die for now. So,
Oh my gosh. I understand.
That isn't all that bad. It's a second chance.
Man. Oh, man. Catch you in the next life. Yeah. This is
Exactly.
yeah. Some of us need a redo for sure.
No,
Yeah.
see you later.
Yeah. Okay. So since you're starting to talk about quantum mechanics, a lot of people talk about quantum leaping. And I know that's a huge fascination and interest of people right now. How do you guide people into learning how to do quantum leaping? I guess explain to people what quantum leaping is first.
Yeah, let's do that. What I want to do is first explain it, second, how you experience it, and third, give a free resource for people that are ready to do that or think they're ready to do that. We're just having a good old time, Andrea. We're just having a good old time. And it's very simple. I'm actually happy that we started with a little electron buddy because quantum leaping comes from the mechanics of quantum jump, it's called. And in a quantum jump, little tiny electron goes in circles. So if you feel like you're going in circle, you're in the right way. It goes in circles. It keeps going. It keeps going. It keeps going. It does them daily routines, it knows them. And then at some point, there is a photon of light, a ray of light has to hit that moving electron in a perfect way. Call it alignment, call it a moment of insight, call it a breakthrough. Actually, let's call it a breakthrough.
Yeah.
And when that aligns with the electron, it carries it to the next level of rotation. That's a quantum leap. The electron goes from this trajectory to this trajectory. Now to be going in circles to a new level. Yay! I quantum leap to run in circles again, And so how do you know you're going through it? It's never completely effortless. I know there is a lot of talk about effortless movement, but it is not no effort. Maybe it is less effort indeed, but it doesn't mean zero effort, because you still have to be maintaining momentum. You still have to do your daily tasks. But what's going to happen? You keep doing things you believe are true and things are falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
First sign that you're in a quantum leap is not a positive sign. Things are falling apart. Why are they falling apart? They're breaking off to fall away, to free you to go to the next level. But where people are stuck, when things are shaking and falling off and are breaking apart, they try to keep them together.
What does this look like, though? I feel like people need it broken down. Let's try to break it down into terms of a very realistic life situation of an example of a person they're living this way, and then now they want it to move up to, I don't know, like you tell me, like, what's a typical example of somebody's living a certain way and then they want to go to another level? And what are some examples of things when you say fall apart?
Let's do business, because a lot of people I work with are mindful spiritual entrepreneurs. And so let's say you have a typical, or here, when I tune into your audience, you have a lot of audience that is currently at a job they don't like and they would like to run a business, and they're looking to get free, and or they're looking to move their current income to the next level. That seems to be where a lot of the audience is. And so they're like, well, the first limiting belief in that is I'm doing all I can. If you believe you're doing all you can, you're going to be stuck. It's just the first step. So when you hear yourself, I'm doing all I can, stop and say, oh, wow, I'm doing things I shouldn't be doing. They're interfering with my growth. What should I be doing instead? Asking yourself a question is the first step of quantum leaping, because our subconscious cannot resist temptation of answering. If you ask, what color do you like? Now you're thinking about the color. You were not 30 seconds ago. We just need to answer. So you have to ask yourself, which things should I stop doing in order to make space for things that I can do to bring me up to next level? Because if you're too busy to quantum leap, you won't quantum leap. So you have to break patterns either by yourself, or the greatest thing ever, if when you get fired. This is what happens with so many people. They keep complaining about their boss, their job, their paycheck, and then they get fired and like, oh my gosh, what happened? I'm like, you did it. Congratulations. Quantum leaping. You are now free. Let's create what you'd rather be doing. In toxic relationships, where all of a sudden you find things about a person that make it impossible for you to stay with them. In money, very often before breakthrough in financial stability, you will first be broke before you break through. And so you just have to say like, oh, wow, you and I chatted for a second about human worth and why it's so important. I speak to a lot of audiences, and, I usually ask people, if you set a goal, reach the goal, raise your right hand. And everybody raises the right hand because we both set a goal, reach the goal. And I'm like, I'm like, that's your right hand. Pat yourself on the back, say, I'm right, I'm all right, whatever. High ego, I am all right. But then I say, how many of you set a goal and didn't reach it? Did everything you could? And that's every single person. And that's your left hand. And that hand, there's nothing left to do. There's nothing left to give. I'm so exhausted. And so the journey of quantum leaping is, do you know that you are all right when there's nothing left? Can you bring two hands together and say, I'm still all right with nothing left to prove to anybody, nothing left to lose, or no fear left of losing? When you arrive at a point, I'm all right with nothing left, you become unstoppable. Until that point, you're living in fear of a loss.
I love that. So when you're in this place of quantum leaping and like you're saying, you lose everything and then you're okay with it, then is this a good time where you tell people to start manifesting?
Yeah, very much so. Because remember that everything in our life, and it's an interesting perspective, but it happens to be a true one, is a reflection of the past. Like this conversation we're having, in the past, we had to put on a schedule. Even earlier in the past, you've had to launch this amazing podcast, even early in the podcast,
Yeah.
in the past. So this is a reflection of the past,
Mm-hmm.
and you cannot change the past. A lot of people are looking at the ruins of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to change what's outside of them. I often tell a teenager who stands in the mirror and looks at the zit in the mirror, they don't reach into the mirror and try to pop a zit in the mirror. They'd be thinking it's insane. But we do it all day long. This life here is a mirror.
Uh-huh.
You can't reach into the mirror and pop the zit. What you can do is go like, it doesn't matter. What is the past. What would I rather have? And then take the steps to create it.
Well, I think it's really important what you're saying because you need to think about the fact that you need to create the past the way you want to create the future, right? So it's like you're saying, like you look back at your past, it's like, well, no kidding, I ended up here, right? I did this, this, and this in the past. So use that to create a new past starting today because today is going to be yesterday and start creating a different past so that tomorrow is a different tomorrow and everything just starts to unfold. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, life is simpler than we make it, but we're going to try real hard. I do every day to complicate it.
I mean, it's a lot to think about when you start learning all these things and thinking about how we have, it's hard. I want to say we have more control than we think, but we don't. We do and we don't. Like
We have complete control on our ability to respond to everything and zero control over everything. Once you unlock the ability to love whatever you go through in the best and highest way, what you go through will shift. That is the basic principle of manifestation. And yes, I can give the fun steps, and I probably will just to
go for it.
to add value to it. But prior to these basic steps, which is a system, and as any system, if you apply it, it will work to a certain degree. The degree is divine alignment. You cannot scream at a rose and expect it to bloom before its time. It's the biggest concept in manifestation. Never ask when. The answer is it's done within divine timing. Once you understand peace at that, you will stop being exhausted that the bud is not a blossom. And
I love flower analogies because there's so many ways to use them. And like you're saying right now, people can very simply think about the fact that it just hasn't had enough water yet. You got to keep watering it and then that bud will keep going and then it's going to bloom.
Yeah. So once you trust the divine timing, that's the biggest thing. And you say, I've manifested and now I trust. Then you can apply the system. Prior to applying the system, however, the shortcut to all manifestation is be so emotionally grateful and appreciative of the tiniest of blessings you now have. And when the size of blessing increases, your emotion does not, because there is no room to be more grateful. When you are in that space of gratitude, it triggers a law of appreciation. What you appreciate appreciates and grows in value. What you depreciate, complain, criticize, or compare, leaks and depreciates in energy. So when you catch yourself observing reality through comparing, criticism, or complaining, you are depreciating any manifestation you've done. And no system you can follow has energy to bring your body into the blossom. So recenter, and the recenter by saying, I send love to it all. I send love to my weakness, loving myself enough. I say, I send love to my sorry ass right now. And there is so much love for her. Can you just really being a little sorry ass, judging somebody ad nauseum? But it's so important to say, I send love to me. I send love to the point of judgment. I send love to all of them. And I'm so grateful for the awareness of this moment and for the love that I have to move past this moment. And what am I grateful for right now? And so as you expand your capacity to appreciate, things will start unfolding that had no room on your vision board.
Mhm.
On March 3rd, one of my books landed on the moon. It was not on the vision board. Which psychopath would be dreaming of a book on the moon? I mean, I don't know, but it's a cool thing I can throw into conversation.
Yeah.
Then, I'm in the movie that's coming out June 26th with one of my mentors, Joe Vitale, who I saw in his secret, and watching the movie was like, it'd be nice to be in the movie with him one day.
Mhm.
20 years later, the divine timing unfolded. Now he's a close friend, right? And so you can't force it.
Mhm.
Trust whatever you've wished is unfolding, because I was not attached to anything but grateful for everything. So that's a shortcut. Now the system. You ready for a system?
Well, I wanna say something real quick on gratitude because I think a lot of people, they make gratitude lists every day and they think about the things that they were grateful, and that's really great, but something I like to do to push it a little bit further is also to think about a miracle of the day. Take it beyond just, "I'm grateful, I'm happy this happened," like, what was really remarkable? Like, what was a miracle of the day that that happened? Because there are miracles every day, and those are harder to find, but once you start seeing that, you shift your vision completely and you start seeing things in such a different light. It's not just gratitude, it's miracles and believing in that divine existence for yourself. But go ahead and go into your system now.
Yeah. Einstein said that there are only two ways to live a life: is if everything is miracle or nothing is. And so, to your point, when you see all of life as a miracle, all of life reflects it back with greater and greater miracles unfolding. So, breathing is a miracle. Try go without it for 10 minutes. No, do not try it. It will not work.
Do not make
Not
that
try
advice.
it. Okay, so if you want to follow something, if your personality type loves and thrives with hacks, these are amazing hacks. And when I say amazing hacks, over several thousand people's testimonials on it working. So maybe it'll work for you if you allow for it to work. First, you decide what it is you're manifesting. Be very clear in terms of the outcome. What do you want? So let's use soulmate. I love using soulmate because it's so easy. So if you are attracting a soulmate, you want to write down not 50 qualities of a person. Why? Because you are interfering with free agency. You want to write down 50 qualities of a relationship. It's very important. What do you want your relationship to be like? And 50 qualities of that relationship. Do you want there to be trust? Do you want there to be intimacy? Do you want there to be kindness, generosity, adventure? 50 qualities of relationship. Then before you go to bed, very important, because the last thought you fall asleep with is what your subconscious is coded for 4 hours. This is the greatest shortcut ever.
Sorry to interrupt, but people talk about getting good sleep. If you go to bed mad, you go to bed angry or frustrated or something, when those are your last thoughts of the day, that you sleep like crap. So, yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, absolutely. And so if you take that to the next level, then if you go to sleep, and I will go through envisioning what I will take you through right now, you are coding your brain. Your neural receptors in the brain create neural pathways to then seek it out in your life. So you pick one quality. Let's say you picked kindness. I don't know what kindness looks for somebody else. For me, kindness looks, I come home and my husband rubs my feet, for example. So I'm going to imagine sitting on the couch, and if you're creating a soulmate rubbing your feet. You want to be within your body, not observing it. So when you imagine, it's very important that you own experience. You're going to truly feel like somebody's rubbing your feet, and you are so tenderly present to that moment, and you're so grateful that you fall asleep with that feeling. And as you do that, the next morning you wake up, and that is where the rubber meets the road, because you brought in the kindness. Now, in order for you to be vibrating, you have to give it back, because the law of frequency has to be balanced by receiving and giving. So as you've received it, now you're going to wake up in the morning and you're going to ask, what is the kindest way to live this day? What is the kindest way to treat myself? What is the kindest way to go through this task? What is the kindest way to call my ex? Good luck. I'm sending love to all of you who need it. And as you go day after day after day, you pick one of those qualities intuitively. Your life becomes so purposefully at the frequency of very clear virtues that you become an energy stamp, you become an energy beacon for that energy to recognize you and be attracted to you. And one thing that, especially with soulmates, the one thing that I hear over and over and over again, by the time I met him, it was just a nice gesture. It wasn't a need. It was just like, oh, wow, it works. Yippee. But the joy of becoming is where the miracle is at.
So what about for work, for people? Like we were talking about that earlier, and you were using that as an example, somebody that's wanting a new job. Do they write down the qualities of a new?
Life. So the quality of one of the two things, it depends on how passionate you are about it and whether fulfilled is your driving force. If you want to be fulfilled doing your job, it's got to be on your list, feeling fulfilled. If you want your job to fulfill the paycheck for your life, it's going to be a different list. And there is no shaming one way or the other. You know, this whole story about when you love what you do, you don't work a day of your life,
Mhm,
that is true, but it isn't true for everybody.
mhm.
Some people love their life so much that they need a paycheck to pay for their life, and there shouldn't be a shame around it. So, would you like to have a 9 to 5 that pays you 300,000 a year that you can then fulfill your life and live fully? No judgment. The
Yeah.
important thing is your list, no judgment.
Yeah.
Whatever you put on it is yours. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a big thing for a lot of people is just getting out of whatever rut they're in. And I think for a lot of people, it's changing careers, or especially when they're older and it's like, well, I've already been doing this for 20, 30 years, but I'm not happy. But like you're saying, you got to look at, well, is it providing you with the lifestyle that does make you happy from, 5 to 10 p.m. in the weekend? So if it is, then maybe you can look at that job and find a way to value it more and find some love and gratitude and miracles for it because it is providing you with what you do love on your off time. But if it's all just bad, then
Yeah, I often find that to be a self-sabotage for a person to hide behind the current inability to heal a much deeper wound.
yeah,
And so the rut is one of the ways for us to maintain the healing we're not ready yet for. Because the second we're ready, we find the way out.
yeah. When you want it bad enough, you have to want it. Can't just need it. I tell people that all the time. I'm like, you can't just need it. You have to want it. There's a lot of people that need things, but they don't want it bad enough. When you want something bad enough, you'll get it. You'll find a way.
And you can't want it for somebody, right? My greatest downfall when I first started practicing all of these things was wanting it more for people I was helping than they wanted them for themselves.
Mhm.
And that's a downfall. You just can't. You just can't want it more for other people because it's not productive, not for you, not for them.
No. So, where are your abundant me teachings?
So it's interesting because when you said you have to have a want, many years ago, 2014 actually, Bob Proctor, who was an amazing figure in Canada, he was in Secret and he was my mentor, loved Bob. And he sat me down and he said, the day that you understand that you got to go where you want it, not just need it, is the day it'll change your life. It was a very tender thing. So when you said it, I actually thought of him. And then you intuitively went to the next question. So I've learned from Bob the 6 mental faculties. I taught about mindset and personal development for many years. But I always asked, why is it called mindset? If it's set, it ain't moving. If it's not moving, it's not worth having, mindset. It's like set it on higher purpose. It's a grind. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work for me. So when I talked to Bob, he was the one that first introduced me to 6 mental faculties. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait, mindset. It's the set of 6 faculties. So I started playing with those faculties for many years. And then parallel with that was working with universal laws. And so 2 years back, it was really miraculous alignment to see how 6 mental faculties, which create our reality, which is perception, imagination, intuition, memory, reason, and will, each correspond to universal laws.
Mhm.
When you harmonize the laws, you harmonize the mindset, and your life is harmonized into beautiful, miraculous reality. And no amount of affirmation is going to make a book levitate because of the law of gravity. And so I can visualize how my body flies from ocean to ocean. Well, now, since I haven't mastered the underlying underpinning of the law of gravity, it is just not likely, you know? And so there are laws to money, there are laws to relationship. They are basic universal laws, and you can never outwork the law. You either work with it and it supports you and you thrive through it, or you work against it and it always wins. The law always wins. And that's why so many people go like, well, nothing works for me. I'm like, you're actually violating a few laws.
Okay, so talk on that for a second, because that's exactly what I hear a lot of people say. It's not working for me. Nothing's happening. Nothing's changing. Well, this is just my life. My life is what it is. These are the cards I was dealt. I'm sure you hear that too from a lot of people when they're just maybe not believing in it at first or surrendering enough. They just really have that feeling of things can't change for them because there's something different for them. There's always just that, like, well, it's me. Like, it won't happen for me. You're this, you're that, whatever. I can't do what you do.
First of all, I want to honor that and say whatever you believe is true. Like Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can or you believe you cannot, you're true. You're right either way. So, right, I mean, we would not be interacting with somebody who is convinced that there is no hope. You
Yeah.
can invite and say, what I love to shift for people is to say, what if?
Mhm.
So, because if somebody is very set in their subconscious pattern of all of this is possible for someone else but me, you cannot shift them immediately to it's possible for me because no cell in their body knows how to vibrate at that new possibility.
Mhm.
But what you say is that what if it were possible?
Mm.
And what if it were possible for you?
And can you believe it's possible?
Yeah. What if? Just what
Yeah.
if? Can we allow for what if? And then instead of visualizing, I'm so happy and grateful now that this is in my life now, which is Bob Proctor's amazing thing. I love, I use it all the time. Visualize instead, what if?
Mhm.
What if I could have a nicer home? What if I could travel? What if, like, what if? And what happens when a person goes into what if? There's a lot of emotion because usually somebody somewhere at some point robbed them of
Mhm.
human dignity and worth
Mhm.
and convinced them that that is why it was not possible for them.
Mhm.
They're not deserving of it.
That makes a lot of sense. And I can just see already like how valuable that is for a lot of people that believe that. I mean, I get comments like that sometimes from people like, well, I'm not as strong as you are, or I don't have the strength you have, Andrea. I can't do that right now. But yeah, it's like, but what if you did? What
What if
if,
you could?
and what if you just imagined yourself that way? Can you possibly see that? And then sometimes you can start to envision that and start to believe it too.
People are so terrified. We go to school, homeschooled my kids. It was an amazing experience. Before it was a thing to do, right? Because my daughter's 28. My son is 24 now.
Hopefully you're done now.
They're phenomenal. They're phenomenal human beings. She just defended her double PhD in behavioral statistics and neuroscience. It's phenomenal. And my son is a biomedical engineer. I'm like, see, it works. Homeschooling works.
Yeah.
But anyway, neither here nor there. But homeschooling them, what I had to learn was that when they come wired to learn. We all come wired to learn, and we're so eager to learn.
Like curiosity.
Yes, but if we learn from people that squash it in us,
Mm.
it kills desire. And I think all manifestation is based on desire and on resilience.
Mhm.
And usually, unfortunately, our beautiful schools teach you don't fail, because if you fail, you have failing grade.
Mhm.
And that kills resilience completely. And the school says there's one answer, but there's one right answer. In what reality? In reality, when nothing is ever innovated. In real world, there is a new answer for every question.
Mhm.
And so when we go to school, we suppress our two most important features of manifestation. And we believe we're unable to do so because we've been taught so.
Yeah, don't get me started on that one. We've homeschooled, and my oldest, she's gotten to a point where she doesn't want to homeschool anymore for some reason. So we're sending her to a school. Yeah. We'll see how that goes. I think she's gonna hate it after a year. Not because the school is gonna be awful and bad, but I think she's just not old enough to appreciate the freedom that you get with homeschool, but a whole nother thing.
My daughter went for the last 2 grades, and my son went to high school as well. And it was beautiful because now looking back, they have a point of comparison and a point of gratitude. So it's a blessing. She'll go in, she'll come back. My mom is cool. You're like, yeah.
Yeah.
That can
Yeah,
be.
exactly. I think this is maybe just what we need for her to have a little bit more insight into understanding why we do homeschool and the freedoms that it offers because she can't really compare yet. So I think maybe after this year we'll go back to it, but I don't know. Thank you so much for sharing all that. Is there anything else you want to share with the audience before I let you go?
Let's play. Since we talked about Quantum Leap a little bit, one of our free resources is actually Quantum Leap ebook. I'm going to try to pull. It's mygiftoffer.com. But what I would like to do, Andrea, so there are 50 subconscious beliefs there that are blocking a person from moving on, and 50 corresponding beliefs to break through. And then there's a free video actually that trains you how to shift the energy from one to the next.
That's so great.
Yeah, so I'm going to open that and I'm going to ask you to name a number and we'll just see what belief comes through. And I have to entertain myself in these things. Thank you for creating space for us to play together. All right, I pulled it up. Quantum Leap. So from 1 to 50, any number.
I don't want to play. I'm just kidding.
Let's do it.
3.
3. Let's go what 3 is. Number 3 is success is for others, not for me. You tell me that wasn't intuitive for our conversation. Hang on, girl. Okay, success is for others, not for me. So the new program would be I'm capable of creating success and happiness in my own unique way. The quote to ponder is from Albert Schweitzer, which is success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you're doing, you will be successful. So to summarize this very powerful conversation, fall in love with your life, with the moments of your life as they are now. Be so full of gratitude for the things you do love that the things you don't will start falling off, sometimes painfully, but always purposefully. Download mygiftoffer.com and take yourself through that amazing modality to shift into this and other programs.
Yeah, I have to look at that now.
Enjoy. It's fun.
Where can people find you?
So our company is You2Shine, YU2shine.com. So come find us there. And empowerme.love is our beloved app that's only $20 a year and has changed thousands of lives and it will impact someone's. Empowerme.love.
Oh, well, I love this conversation. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything.
Thank you, Andrea.